Hello, I'm Ali Sharaf with the LPAC TV. Here I have with me Maryam Al-Khawaja reporting on the ongoing events unfolding on the ground in Bahrain. Maryam is from the Bahrain Center for Human Rights. She's here to discuss the situation and also give us a little bit of background on what's going on. Let me start by saying that the crisis we are witnessing is of a system in collapse. From Ireland to Tunisia, Egypt to Bahrain, the collapse is systemic and therefore the remedy is not local. What we want to do is we want to touch on the issue concerning Bahrain itself, but also situate it in the mass strike process sweeping the entire planet. We know one fact for sure, and you can maybe elaborate on that in the case of Bahrain and other nations in the Arab world, but the fact is that the media are lying and are simply not telling the truth. Now in the US, there are tens of thousands of unionists and students demonstrating in Wisconsin against a bill by Governor Walker, who want to ram through a legislation which will eliminate the collective bargaining rights for public employee unions. So people have signs that say "walk like an Egyptian" and other signs that compare the governor to Mubarak and such people. We have seen now that in Bahrain the military have withdrawn from the famous Pearl Square in Bahrain, and that people have a sense of victory. So how is the situation there on the ground now?
The reform movement is something that goes a long way back in history. It's not like other countries, and that's why it's very important when you're looking at the context of what's happening today. The movement for reform in Bahrain is something that started in the 1920s, and we saw it build up. In the 1950s, we saw a unity between Sunni and Shia leaders who united to ask for reform and lead an uprising against Al Khalifa ruling family. But they were suppressed by the British, who came in, arrested the leaders of the movement, and sent some of them to St. Helena Island. And so the reform movement is not something new to Bahrain. It's something that's been ongoing. Even in the past 10 years, in which the government supposedly changed and promised reforms, we still saw people protesting, going out and asking for their rights, going out and demanding reform. But I think what makes the situation different now is that the fact that what happened in Tunisia and Egypt, it actually made the youth, especially here in Bahrain, feel empowered and feel like it's actually possible for them to make a difference. Whereas before those revolutions happened, here in Bahrain there was a sense of hopelessness and a sense of depression, that they would never actually be able to change anything because they've been trying for so long and nothing has really changed. But I think what happened in Egypt and Tunisia definitely made them feel empowered and like they can actually make a change. And that's what led to the movement of 14th February. Now what we see today is the people, what the people also see as a victory is the retaking of the Pearl Square, which the government forced the people out of by attacking women and children and men while they were sleeping. And one of the responses we saw, like people were walking into the roundabout, some of them fell to the ground and kissed it. Other people are cheering, screaming, "Victory, victory." But at the same time, and I think this is very true, one of the speakers said that today is not a day of joy, because in the past few days we've lost six Bahrainis who were peacefully protesting for their rights. And so today is not a day of joy or celebration, but rather it's a day of remembrance, and it's a day for standing in respect for the lives that were lost during these protests. And definitely those lives lost is what is making people move forward and say that we have to go through with these demands. We have to go all the way until we get the demand of making the regime fall.
You see that the GCC countries have pulled ranks and gave their support to the government in Bahrain. And how would you describe this? It would seem that Bahrain is somehow the weak link in the constellation of the GCC nations. Why is the Bahrain uprising very important for the region?
It's of course very reason, because I mean all of these regimes in the Gulf are somewhat similar to each other, and they all rely on each other for support. That's why they're very afraid that if the Bahraini people are successful in getting their freedom and rights right now, that it might spill over into the other Gulf countries, and it's something they definitely don't want to see. So, I mean, although if you look at the situation in Bahrain or the way things are happening, the Bahraini situation, Bahraini country was actually one of the countries that was deemed most likely to have a revolution, because the way things have been built up and the way the government deals with the family has actually been building up to where we are today. Whereas in the other Gulf countries, the situation is not as similar. But I think that one of the things that really troubles the governments around the Gulf is that if the people here are able to make Al Khalifa leave the country, or they may force them to make reforms for the people, then it might spill over into their countries where people will demand the same thing.
Seems like Bahrain stands out in the Gulf, as you described, because there's a long history of resistance. I mean, as you described, also from the British. Now the British have put the Al Khalifa in power basically since 1971, which was supposedly the Independence Day or the Independence Year. But they continued to have, for example, the Ian Henderson, who became the head of the secret police in Bahrain up till 2002, I believe. What has been the role of the British so far in Bahrain, and how did that then affect the uprising throughout the years?
Well, I mean, the Western world or the Western governments definitely have a role to play when it comes to the situation in Bahrain. I don't personally think that the British put the Al Khalifas in power. They certainly helped them stay in power, but the Al Khalifas invaded Bahrain and took over it by force. So they weren't placed there by the British, but they definitely stayed in power by the help of the British. So, I mean, they definitely play a role. They definitely have a leverage on the government here.
You know, the financial crisis have had its effects worldwide. We see a surge in the food prices worldwide, and the aggregate food production worldwide is decreasing, and is definitely the cause of the uprising in major countries like Egypt, Tunisia, what we see in Bolivia today. Can you describe what the effects of the financial crisis have been on Bahrain and the political situation?
There are people who live in very poor conditions in Bahrain, especially seeing that 70 to 80% of the Bahraini population live on a low income average.
What we've seen is also that the media is trying to paint this conflict as a Sunni versus Shiite conflict, where there has been slogans among the participants in the protests that this is simply not a Shia-Sunni issue, but it's an issue of legitimate demands of the people. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't really expect much more from the Bahraini media. The Bahraini media has always had a role that they've played, which is being propagated by the government to create a division between the Sunni and Shia sects in Bahrain. So this isn't something new. The government has, for the past several years, they have been working very hard at instigating sectarian divide within the community. And that's because the first rule of politics is divide and conquer. As long as they can keep the Shias and Sunnis divided, then that means they can control them. But if the Sunnis and Shias realize that they have issues that are in common and that they will all benefit from changing or making reforms in the government, then there's nothing that can stand in their way. So, I mean, nobody expects anything more from the media other than fabricating lies and videos like the one we saw after the attack on the protesters on Thursday morning. I mean, my friend sent me messages telling me that they didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they saw that video being shown on TV, because it was so ridiculous. I mean, the claims that they were making on that video did not make sense at all.
Can you say more about the demands of the people? What the demands are?
When it started out in the beginning, the demands were more about reform and change. There were things like, we want to change the constitution, we want an elected government, we want stuff like that. It was simple demands about reform that people felt that they really needed to be able to live better lives with human dignity, human rights, and freedom. But after the first victim fell, from being killed by the riot police, the demands automatically changed from being the demands of reform to being the fall of the entire regime in the country. And I feel like people feel here that a regime that uses this kind of excessive force against its own people, such as live ammunition and shotgun bullets and attacking children and women at night while they sleep, and any regime that would do that to their own people is a regime that needs to go.
And how do you see in the future now, as we discussed in the beginning, and these are not local events and not solely caused by local events? How do you see the future there? Is there any orientation towards knowing how the whole world is orienting itself, especially in the financial crisis?
Well, I think that the fact that there are several revolutions happening at the same time has its pros and cons. I mean, the pros are that each society provides support for the other and helps the other to keep going, saying that we're all here, we all want the same things and we can do it. So I think that is uplifting for a lot of people. I think that already people have proven that they have one demand, and that one demand is the fall of the regime. So they've proven that they're not going to leave and they're not going home until that demand is met.
Maryam Khawaji, thank you very much for joining us in LPAC TV.
Thank you.
Do you have a last message to say to the American public?
Yes, I think that it's very important that the American public definitely raise awareness both amongst themselves and in the international community about what's happening in Bahrain, and that definitely can help to help lessen the violence that is used against peaceful protesters here in the country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.